got no name on this message, which is a shame. Normally the no-name ones are just personal attacks by people that can't spell, but this one's really interesting because it's exactly the kind of notion or thoughts I was after. So it reads, I personally think it's been genocide for the last 2 months, regardless of what anybody says. To me, the horrific slaughter has been continuing for far too long, and Netanyahu is committing genocide. The horrific attacks of the Israeli army on women and children are completely unacceptable. He should be tried at The Hague. What I found interesting about that is for that listener, something changed a couple of months ago. There was a shift in that person's view, and I wonder if that corresponds to you. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Elliot's picked up the phone. He's calling from Hull. Good morning. Good afternoon, Elliot. I still think I'm doing the breakfast show in the weekends. Apologies. It is the afternoon. How I'm assuming as you've called in on this, your views have changed.
My views have changed like a few times on this particular
interesting.
topic. It's not really stayed the same.
Can you talk me through? Give us a timeline of how your feelings and opinions have changed.
Yeah, when I first saw the terrorist attack on the 7th of October, I was pretty horrified by it, and I thought Israel had the right to defend themselves. I thought that they needed to go to war, and they needed to take action to make sure that they did try to take out Hamas. Yeah. I think their process has been pretty, it's been pretty devastating in terms of civilian casualties, and that's made the war less appeasable to me. But then the other thing that's actually changed...
Can I just say on that? Because there are always civilian casualties in war.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that perhaps in this one, what bothers you is the civilian casualties? And of course, let's not forget, because there were casualties in the October the 7th attacks. And that is, you cannot ignore that in any kind of formula that we establish. But it does appear that many, many more civilians have been killed in Palestine, that it's a one-sided fight now. That's the bit that... kind of troubles me.
Exactly. I think it definitely seems like there's been a lot more, there has been a lot more civilian deaths, and it's more one-sided. And the military power of Israel is far more superior than any of the Palestinian power that they have. So it's not really a war, it's just an obliteration. But at the same time, if you think about, and I'm going to get a bit off point here, but if you think about when the British bombed Dresden because they were trying to get rid of the evil of the Nazi Empire, that was seen as like a positive thing, and that they killed, I don't know how many people it was, but it was somewhere in the thousands as well. And then the charter for Hamas as well. That's the other thing that sort of scares me, is that their charter actually wants to obliterate Israel as well.
They rewrote the charter in 2020 or 2021, and they reworded it to focus on the removal of the Zionist state, if I get this right, and they removed anti-Semitic wording from the earlier version. I was only reading about it before I came on it. It's interesting you should bring it up, because I was unaware of that change.
I didn't know it changed.
I'm not defending, I'm not in any way even apologising, but it's important that they have changed the wording to make eradicating the state of Israel, I guess, more appealing, if that's such a thing. They're rebranding what it is they're trying to do.
I don't know. It just seems like you try a terrorist organisation. It's hard to sort of sympathise with them, and it's hard to that's where I think it's going to be difficult for Israel and Hamas to ever come to a deal, because Hamas is a terrorist organisation. They committed an act of terror on October 7th, and they were voted in by the people of Palestine as well, which is another... Before
it was defined as a terrorist state by some countries, not all. I don't think it's defined as a terrorist state by the UN. And there's the old, and I hate to use it in such a crass way, but you only have to look at how things have changed in Northern Ireland to recognise that for years, decades, our government refused to negotiate with terrorists, and yet the majority government now has links with the IRA, historical links with the IRA.
Then look how much trouble Corbyn got into for having links to the IRA and having stuff like that. So, I mean, it just seems like everyone's a bit hypocritical in terms of their viewpoints.
Well said, Elliot. You know, I think There's an awful lot of truth in what you're saying. Can I ask how old you are as well? Because you mentioned 9/11. Some of my colleagues here don't remember 9/11. It happened, before.
Oh yeah, I remember 9/11. Yeah, I'm 31 years old,
Okay.
so it was when I was very young. I remember sitting and watching television, just seeing seeing the devastation that was going on in 9/11, and. Yeah, I mean, I didn't take much from it. I did obviously take much from it. It changed the course.
Changed the course of. It changes everything. It changes everybody's outlook. I think if you were there to witness it on TV, God help you if you're in New York at the time, I can't imagine. But if you witnessed it on TV, you will never forget it. Elliot, thank you for such a considered call on what can be an incredibly inflammatory subject. Paul's been hanging on the line from Brockley. Good afternoon to you, Paul.
Good afternoon, Matthew. It's Woody, actually. Paul,
Oh.
you know.
Apologies, Woody.
I felt compelled to ring you, Matthew. I've been listening to this. Obviously, as you know, I'm Jewish, and obviously I was absolutely appalled and still am appalled by what happened on October the 7th.
Yeah.
And I was very, I can't say grateful for an Israeli response initially. But I mean, as time has gone on, I think number one, Netanyahu is behaving in a way that is almost as subhuman as the way Hamas are behaving. You cannot take basic essentials away from human beings, and expect to be treated as a normal human being yourself.
I find this so life affirming because, it would be so easy to say, I'm a Jewish man, an attack on Jews, attack on Israel is an attack on me, and yet you have come out with, to equate what the IDF, what Netanyahu is doing with Hamas is incredibly strong and powerful.
I mean, I have to tell you this as well. My father, who's 93, so he served in the British Army. You could say he's a Zionist, but even he and many people that I've spoken to, Jewish people, are absolutely appalled about this. I mean, listen, there's also the underlying, what happens to Hamas. One thing I will say is, as much as I detest what the Israelis are doing in Gaza, it just seems outrageous that the Qataris, people are going to mediate with the Qataris, and yet the Qataris are bankrolling Hamas. And it's like an absolute world fiasco.
Woody, if you go back to Afghanistan, our incursions, fighting Islamic State, Islamic State was being funded by Saudi Arabia, who we sell weapons to. So the world is mad.
Where do we go from here? I mean, listen, I have recently, I'm sure you've heard of a guy called Moab Hassan Youssef.
Yes.
Son of Hamas, who is the son of one of the founder members of Hamas. And I've watched some of his videos recently and heard his interviews. And, what we are now faced, when I say we, it's the world, it's I haven't got a clue what's going to happen in Israel. But I mean, what I would say is it's almost like, and I'm not trying to diminish any of my criticism of Netanyahu and this far-right government that's just absolutely disgustingly settlers talking about populating Gaza.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not surprised people are anti. If that's what Zionist is, then I am definitely not a Zionist. Although, if you like, the default setting for a Jewish kid born in North London is you are almost kind of like born a Zionist until you can open your eyes and you can discern what's right and what's wrong. According to the Torah, it's like thou shalt not kill. It's just like I like most other Jews I know, and probably many other people and Muslims as well. Where do we go from here? What's the way forward?
I don't know. I don't know.
And it's all well and good. One thing I will say is it's almost like there doesn't seem to be a lot of criticism about Hamas anymore. It's almost like it's all about what Netanyahu's doing.
Why do we think? Because I think you're right. And I think in part that is a problem for Netanyahu because it means that people lose focus on the reasons why. But I think that the reason that's happening, that there's less focus on Hamas, is people are just horrified by what the IDF is doing in Israel. I mean, as I said last night, Channel 4 News are watching this kid starving to death in essentially an unmanned hospital, and the guy saying food is 10 minutes away.